Should a convicted sex offender be allowed to study at an Australian university? First instinct is probably to say no way, imagining some ghastly man preying on innocent young female students. Having heard so many terrible stories of children being sexually exploited by adults, we're all rightly concerned about any such possibility and determined to do what we can to keep young people out of harm's way. But today I want to introduce you to a so-called sex offender to show you these stories are often much more complex than we assume. In 2011, Nicolaas Bester was sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison following the discovery of a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old student when he was a science teacher at a Tasmanian private school. He served his sentence, was released in 2013, and is now doing a PhD in chemistry at the University of Tasmania. But his life is being made hell by vigilante feminists who've made him the poster boy for the Safe Spaces campaign being run on the Tassie Uni campus. He's been banned from attending the uni library and the gym. Demonstrators have been camping out in front of his house. There's a petition to stop him attending the university at all. And he's just lost his job playing the organ in a local church. The man is not a pederast. This is not a man with a history of sexually preying on children. He's a man who made mistakes, served his time in prison. A man, I believe, should be allowed to get on with his life. I thought you might like to meet Nico and hear his story. Welcome, Nico.
Thank you, Bettina. So nice to see you in the flesh.
Nice to talk to you.
I'm a big fan.
I want to go back and describe briefly what happened to you. Now, you're South African and you were married with young children when you migrated to Australia, and that was due to the concern about unrest at the end of apartheid. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And presumably that was quite a tough time for you.
Well, yes, it was. It began when we were living in York in the UK, and the news from South Africa was very bad. And so we decided to immigrate to Australia. And to cut a long story short, we decided it was best for the children, and it was a good place to make a new start. So we started here in 1987, in May 1987, and then moved to Hobart in 1988, and I've been here ever since.
Mm-hmm. And so things were sort of settling down when you got a job teaching at a private school in Hobart.
Yes,
but then and then you made a big mistake. You got sexually involved with one of your students. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, for the first few years I taught at a boys' school, and then I got a job at the sister school, at the girls' school, and I was there very happily for many, many years. And then I got involved. Things were not happy. I was not a happy man, and in 2010 I got involved with one of my students for about 6 months, from July to December. Yes.
And eventually that was discovered, that relationship.
Yes, it was.
The police got involved. Now, I just want to mention that they found some images of children on your computer. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, I can. What happened was I downloaded a font. It was actually a copyright font, so the download was illegal, and it came down in a zip file. And I opened the zip file, and all of these images suddenly splayed themselves all over my desktop. And which, of course, is the risk you take when you download things you don't know about. And so I deleted them all, but of course, as we know, they're never all deleted. And so, of course, when all of this blew up, they looked at my computer and were able to sort of recover by electronic means these images.
Yeah, yeah. And so you end up in prison and you lost everything. Tell me about the cost for you.
Oh, I lost everything. I lost my home. I'd been married for 37 years. I lost my marriage. I lost my children. I lost my job. I lost my status in the community. I lost absolutely everything. It was a devastating time, but I take full responsibility for what I did. It was illegal. I knew it was illegal, and I paid the price.
I mean, you think it was reasonable that you had to serve a prison term in that circumstance?
It was the law. It's the law, and the law is quite clear. You know, if you're having sex with a woman and she is 17 years old today, and it's 1 minute to midnight, and she's 18 tomorrow, then tonight it's illegal, and 1 minute past midnight when she's 18, it's legal.
Yeah, but you knew at the time she was underage.
Oh yes, I did. Yes. Mm.
Okay, so you come out from prison and you spend time on the dole looking for jobs, and finally got a position, a PhD. Decided to do a PhD in chemistry at the University of Tasmania.
That's correct. Yes.
And then you did something else pretty stupid. I can imagine how easily this happens.
Well, look, it was late one night. I'd had a skin full of wine, and I was on Facebook, and somebody trolled me. I got into an argument about Gillian Triggs, God curse her.
Of all people. That's the ironic touch in this whole horrible story.
I was trolled. Of course, immediately they discovered who I was, and they trolled me, and I said something which was, illegal. Again, I didn't realize at the time it was illegal, but anyway, the upshot of that was that I ended up.
But essentially, you made a comment about really quoting some of the Facebook messages that this young woman had. Exactly. When the young woman was talking about your relationship. Yeah. Exactly,
but to actually quote her meant that I was breaking the law, because it fell under the ambit of an act that says it's illegal to publish anything which depicts a sexual act with a person who is under 18.
Yeah.
So that was, even though she'd said it on Facebook and I was quoting her. It didn't matter. I was actually publishing it, and so I was held accountable for that, and that was also illegal.
And you ended up in prison again?
Yeah, 11 weeks, yep.
Yep. Okay, so we've now up to 2016, and you're released, and you're working at university, studying full-time at the University of Tasmania.
Yep.
And then what happened?
Well, It actually started in May when the University of Tasmania Women's Collective decided they would start a campaign to have me excluded from the campus on the basis of this safe spaces thing, which is going around in the universities, which you know about and which you've written about. So the poor old university who decided to take me on, God bless them, that was their policy, that they wouldn't discriminate against me. And so the university actually has ended up as being the meat in the sandwich. UTAS Women's Collective have carried on this highly malicious campaign, and they started a petition, an online petition, not as a matter of general principle, but naming me specifically as the reason why they wanted.
So you're the poster boy for their campaign.
Poster boy for the campaign, exactly. And yes, and so they got 3,500 signatures, but of course it's on Facebook, so it's friends of friends, and that kind of thing. And of course they ran a campaign in the press, and they ran a campaign on television. As I've shown you all the clips and everything. And there was something about, you were accused of acting in a predatory manner to women at the gym. Oh well, I've never been shown the complaint. I've never been told who the complainants were or what the complaint was. But I make no excuses for going to the gym. I've been going to that gym since 1992. Yeah. And I spend hours there. I'm a gym junkie, and I'm a bit of a fitness tragic, and so I make no excuses. I mean, sometimes I spend as much as 5 hours there.
Yeah. But someone made a complaint about that. So the university's been trying to help negotiate all of this, allowing you to continue your studies. You've had to make certain compromises. I volunteered certain compromises, yes, because I'm now in the business of writing my thesis. I spend most of my time at home. I go and see my supervisor from time to time, and my supervisors are very supportive of me, and I go and see him. I go and see my supervisors when necessary in order to catch up. But they've also been using the media. I mean, Classic is one of the big activists in this area, Nina Funnell. She's written some totally misleading information about you in one of the articles she's written. I mean, it's very interesting that they continue to name you and present a lot of misinformation about what happened.
Yeah. I've lost touch directly with my children, but I do know for a fact that they found this very distressing. And in spite of what they may think of me, they are still my children and I love them.
Yeah,
That's the bottom line. And I've decided that I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And so I've taken legal action against the Women's Collective, and particularly against Heidi LaPaglia, who's the ringleader of this whole business.
I mean, you've even had people demonstrate outside your house, photographing you going in and out of your house?
Indeed, yes. Well, yes, on 2 occasions, once on the 9th of August and once on the 11th of, once on the 9th and once on the 10th of August. And in a meeting which I'd had with the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research, yes, she said to me that if I was ever harassed at home, that would be a matter for the police. And so I took her advice and I went to go and see the Hobart CIB, and I lodged a complaint in that regard. I didn't have my mobile with me. I was going out for a run, and so I wasn't able to take a photograph, but they were quite clear as to who they were and where they were from.
And apparently they said they were planning to show everyone where you live. I mean, what did that feel like for you?
Well,
I mean, it must be very frightening.
It's highly intimidating, you know, because
yeah.
I live in accommodation with mostly graduate students, older students, and it's very good accommodation. It's clean and it's tidy and it's student accommodation, and it's ideal. And I don't want to use that. You know, what's not going to happen, Bettina, is I'm not going to skulk around in a grey overcoat in little dark corners at night. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Whatever crimes I've committed have been paid for. We have courts who decide outcomes, listen to evidence and decide outcomes. And that's where the outcomes are decided. Justice Estcourt made that quite clear in an article he wrote in the Law Review.
Yeah, I was very pleased to see that. And he named you specifically and talked about the sort of campaign that's being run about against you. Yeah.
It is sheer vigilantism. That's all it is.
Okay, I just want to mention the last indignity, if you like, the fact that you're a talented musician, you play the piano, the organ and the harpsichord, and you recently had which must have been very nice, another job playing an organ in a church, but they managed to take that away from you too. Well,
what happened was, look, I'm a practicing Catholic, and it turned out that they needed a temporary organist because they were going to be without an organist until they found a new one in March. And so they approached me and asked if I would play, you know, in the interim, particularly over, you know, Advent and Christmas. And so, yes, I took it on and I went along and I, you know, started off and played for the first choir practice. And then the next day I was, you know, I had an interview with the administrator, and dear old Father Shami, he was so embarrassed, and so my heart went out to him. But of course, you know, they'd had phone calls, and somebody got wind of it, and there'd been a campaign, and they'd had 7 phone calls of people objecting to my playing the organ. And I mean, I don't even train the choir, really. You know, the choir is very good. They don't really need me. But yes, so that's one.
So it goes on, and you must really wonder whether you're ever going to be allowed a chance to start a new life.
Well, no, it's not a question of my being allowed a chance. I shall have it. I shall have it.
So there you are. I've seen all the evidence in this case, and there are various issues that really interest me. Over the years, I've talked to many male teachers about sexually provocative behaviour from female students. Sensible teachers, of course, run a mile from these girls, but the teachers are still really vulnerable because they can be easily subject to false accusations if they reject or offend the young woman in question. Here we have an example where evidence of the girl's sexually provocative behaviour was presented to the judge. Now, I'm not saying this for 1 minute absolves Nico of total responsibility for what he did. He deserved to be punished. We must have laws preventing children and young people from sexual exploitation by people in positions of authority. The question that remains for me is whether there's any room in this conversation for talking to young people, particularly young girls, about behaving sensibly and not exploiting their seductive power to ruin the lives of men. But that aside, there's no question that what's happening to Nico now is deplorable. These ignorant, vindictive women are deliberately promoting misinformation about Nico as part of their nonsensical campaign to present university campuses as risky places for young women. This campaign, of course, suffered a major setback after the release of the Human Rights Commission data, showing there is no crisis on our campuses. So they've picked up Nico's case and they're totally misrepresenting the facts. Nico is a man who did something stupid and paid the price for it. With other crimes, when people serve their sentences, they're supposed to be given a chance to resume their normal lives. It's really alarming to me that our society is caught up in this witch hunt around child sexual abuse, which deliberately misrepresents the risk that people who commit such crimes pose to our society. Expert forensic psychologist Dr. Christopher Lennings and Louise Rufile, they were representing the Australian Psychological Society, and they presented evidence from decades of research on this issue for a parliamentary committee that was looking at sentencing on child sexual assault offenders. They showed it's simply not true that all child sex offenders can't stop going out and preying on children. That applies only to a small group of offenders, mainly men who actually seek out boys. Contrary to public opinion, sex offenders generally have low rates of recidivism, the psychologist concluded. And in fact, there's been actually a steady drop over the last 20 years in the rates of recidivism amongst child sex offenders. It's hysterical nonsense to suggest that a man who rapes a child is the same as a teacher who falls for a sexy young teenage girl and stupidly has an affair with her. We need to differentiate between real predators who need proper vigilance and treatment and foolish men or women who make mistakes they're never likely to repeat. Thank goodness the university has the sense to stand up to this nonsense. And it's also good to see Nico has taken legal action against these self-appointed moral guardians determined to ruin what's left of his life.